Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first interaction series for the writing curriculum. My name is Dawn Taylor. I am curriculum lead for the Inspiring Learning team, and I'm joined today on the call with a couple of members of the team, George Crawford, who is one of our early years teachers, and also Kirsty Banks, who has very kindly given us some top tips and support around using digital tools to support the writing curriculum. Hopefully you've had a positive day in the classroom and have managed to get yourself a cup of tea, ready to begin the session today. So we're really delighted to be with you today, and hopefully the input will be really supportive for you and your schools across the authority. This is the first session in our writing series, and our session today will be all around building a positive writing culture and environment within your classrooms and across the wider school. So we have two aims for our session today. First of all, we'd like to support you in your schools to think about how you can really build that positive writing culture and environment, both within your classrooms and across the wider school. And we'd like to share some practical strategies and some ideas on pedagogy that will really enhance the learning in writing across your classroom and school. We hope that the session today will be very much an interactive session, and we've designed our presentation to include opportunities throughout the core input sections for you to pause the recording and engage in either activities or collegiate discussions within your own settings in school. Within the recording today, you will have a facilitator who will support you within your own schools to lead those dialogues and conversations throughout the session. So our SBC Way writing curriculum is underpinned by three components you can see on the screen there. Text generation, how we build sentences and paragraphs. Executive functions, how we plan, write, revise and edit our writing. And thirdly, those transcription skills such as spelling and handwriting. This is all underpinned by some really important pillars, and you can see on the screen there that we've highlighted the one at the bottom. It's really important in the writing curriculum that we're really building a strong purpose and motivation to write. And that's what our session is going to focus on today. Within our SBC Way writing curriculum, we talk about a story of three parts. These three elements come together to support really strong pedagogy and teaching of writing in our schools. The first part is thinking of that writing culture and environment. The second part is the skills that our learners will need to be strong writers. And then finally, we put all of that together to hopefully create independent and engaged writers in our classrooms and schools. And it's that first component, the writing culture and environment, that we're really going to have a think about today in our session. Some of the high-level messages around building a writing culture and environment come from the SBC Way literacy strategy and also the early years strategy. These are both available for you to have a further look at within the writing Padlet. Within the writing steps to success pathways, you will find some clear guidance around building a writing culture and environment that's appropriate to your key stage. You can see on the screen here, this is an example from first level where there's some key messages and then linking in to the national benchmarks. For our first activity today, we would like you to take an opportunity to explore the steps to success for your stage. You will find these on the SBC Way Launchpad under the Steps to Success section, and we'd like you just to take 5 minutes or so just to explore whether it's the early level document for P1, the first level or second level document, really having a look particularly at that developing a writing culture and environment expectations. Welcome back, and hopefully you find that useful, having a look at the steps to success pathways for your own age and stage within your schools. We'd like you to consider, as part of developing the writing culture and environment within your school, the 4 capacities. So we know that this is what we're aiming for in our school for all our learners, to be successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, and effective contributors. And one of the things we would ask you to consider is how does your existing writing practice allow these 4 capacities to be met? We'd also like you to consider the 4 contexts of learning. How are you in your school and in your classroom allowing opportunities for children to write across these 4 contexts? So we have a few examples on the page here around writing across the 4 contexts focused at early level. And again, moving across to first and second level, we have some examples here of some of the learning experiences that would provide opportunities to write across the 4 contexts for learning. So we're going to stop again for another school-based activity. Your facilitator will let you know whether this conversation or dialogue will take place at school level, possibly with stage partners, or as an individual. And we'd like you to consider how you are providing opportunities for your learners in your class to write across the 4 contexts for learning. To access the document, if you scan the QR code on the screen, and then we'd ask you to download it so that then that makes it editable and you can jot in your ideas as part of this self-evaluation conversation. So I'd like you to pause the video now and just take 5 or 10 minutes to do that within your school. So hopefully your class discussion, your school-based discussion went well there, and you can see that you're already providing lots of opportunities in your schools for our learners to write across those 4 contexts. We're going to think now a little bit deeper about how we do build that strong writing culture and environment in our classrooms. So how do we build a positive writing culture in our classrooms? The SBC Way writing curriculum really promotes that we provide learners with a real purpose to their writing. They need to know why they're writing, what the purpose is, and who their audience is going to be. This will really help them engage in their writing tasks. It's also really important that we, as practitioners and teachers, build that motivation to write. If we're enthusiastic about writing and create that atmosphere in our classrooms, then the learners will hopefully take that on board as well. We're going to talk through later in the presentation about how we can think about and consider our interactions with the learners, the experiences that we provide, and the spaces that we create in our classrooms, and how that can really support the writing culture and environment in our classrooms. We're also going to consider our own pedagogy and practice of writing. If we are strong and confident in teaching writing within our classroom, then that will help build that confidence with our learners. It will help us support, model and scaffold writing for our learners, and therefore the learners will feel more supported and more motivated to write. And finally, we're going to think about how we engage with our partners and our families to really build that strong culture across our school community. In the early years document Realising the Ambition, they talk about interactions, spaces and experiences. In the context of writing, we can think about the positive interactions that we have with our learners to promote high quality writing, the planned experiences that we can create within our classrooms and across the school, and the positive writing spaces that would really motivate our learners to engage in the writing process.
A literacy-rich environment in which pupils are surrounded by examples of print will inspire and stimulate their desire to write. At all stages of early level, we should provide the children with a rich variety of texts, both fiction and non-fiction, which are tailored to their interests and tastes and are carefully differentiated in complexity to suit their varied levels of comprehension. We should consider how we can make accessing these texts as appealing and enticing to our pupils as possible. A broad variety of different types of environmental print is another essential stimulus for children. Try to make sure that any print that is used in your learning spaces is displayed at a suitable height for children to see and to interact with. When we consider environmental print, we should also think of the environment outside of the school, or ELC. Outings to shops, cafes, and other local resources are invaluable in developing an awareness and appreciation of text. The role play or home corner can be a particularly useful venue for incorporating both environmental print and mark-making opportunities linked to the children's own everyday experience. Take a moment to think about how many sources of print and examples of mark-making can be found in the average home. All of these could potentially be incorporated within the role-play space. Displays too can be rich in different kinds of print. Always bear in mind that any displays in our learning spaces should be meaningful to the children and should support their learning rather than simply being there for decoration.
So building on that knowledge from early level that George was talking about, we can really consider in our first and second level classrooms how we're building a really positive writing space. Some of the things that you might consider are having a range of meaningful and relevant texts within the class, so children and learners are motivated and can see writing being used for different purposes. Creating a writing nook or a writing table where we can allow learners to write for pleasure and have that personalisation and choice about what they write about. Also having access to a range of different writing tools. So we know that some of our learners are more reluctant to pick up a pencil. So are we allowing opportunities within the space for children to write digitally or using styluses and different ways that they can access and write within the classroom? And finally, we would really be promoting having a writing wall in your classroom. Something that will support the learners to engage in the writing process. It may be somewhere that you can display some scaffolding tools, such as a list of openers that will really support the learners with their writing tasks. And we want this writing wall to have sort of shared ownership with the learners. So this isn't just a nice display that we as practitioners put up, but something that the learners can really interact with, and it can be used and actively used by all learners in the classroom.
During this journey towards becoming independent writers, the adults in the children's life will play a crucial role. They will be responsible for instilling and encouraging in young learners an enthusiasm for and a love of storytelling across all media, including print, film, digital, and audio. Motivating the children through leading by example. The adults in any setting will play a major role in setting the tone for positive attitudes towards texts. Modelling attitudes by seeing to read and write for a variety of purposes and being seen to enjoy reading and writing, and by talking about our own experiences with reading and writing, will all lead to the development of a positive ethos. Being co-creators of texts, modelling the writing process and what this might look like in a pre-literate context. Obviously, at the first stages of early level, the children in most cases will lack the skills needed to write independently, but by acting as a scribe, a co-creator and an editor, we can demonstrate the writing process and guide the children on their journey. Demonstrating that writing can be used for a variety of purposes, to entertain, to give us information, and to recount personal experiences, amongst many other things. Adults should provide examples of writing in as many different genres and formats as possible to allow the children to express themselves and to convey ideas and information across a broad range of learning contexts.
So thinking now about those planned experiences that we can put into place across the whole school and into first and second level. So as George was talking about, we create those opportunities for our learners to write across IDL, across different contexts, and possibly allowing those opportunities to write for pleasure, and for our learners to be choosing their own topics and subjects that they'd like to write about. We've seen lots of good examples across the authority of class teachers allowing their learners to share writing with other classes. Perhaps our second level classes allowed to share writing with our younger learners in the class, or setting up writing buddies, where there's a real opportunity for our learners to showcase and share their writing, and that really helps develop that sense of pride in their writing. Engaging with writing challenges, either within your classroom or within your school, and competitions. Scottish Book Trust are great for having lots of opportunities for writing competitions, and there's other sources across Scotland as well. And finally, thinking about holding author events in school. There's a lot of opportunities, again, through Scottish Book Trust, where you can engage with author events. Some of these are pre-recorded, some of them are live, but lots of opportunities for learners to see how real authors engage in their writing, and that is a really powerful way to try and motivate the learners in our classes. As George described, our interactions with our learners are really key to building up successful writing in our classrooms. We're thinking about interactions, firstly, to build that purpose for writing so that our learners are aware of why they're writing, and really talking around that purpose, the audience, will really support the motivation to write within our classrooms. Thinking of our interactions and how we can allow our learners to connect and build on their prior knowledge, and having that knowledge about what they're writing about, and the questioning that we can do around that can really support the learners to feel confident when they're set on their writing task. Thinking around interactions to model, and that's that thinking aloud process that we can go through when we model, will really allow learners to have the knowledge and have the thought processes that they need when they come to write. And we're going to talk more about the importance of modelling in writing in the next few slides. And finally, thinking of our interactions for giving feedback. This is really essential in the learning process for our learners to know what's gone well and what they need to now do in their writing to make improvements. So those interactions are really powerful in how we present the culture and environment for writing. So we're going to ask you to pause the video shortly to think about some reflective questions within your own context in school. Thinking about your existing practice, how do you currently build that purpose and motivation to write across your school and within your own classrooms? And we'd ask you to consider the three areas: the spaces that you create, the interactions that you have with your learners, and the experiences that you plan. And then your facilitator will guide you through thinking around possible next steps, which you might consider both in your classroom or at school level. So we'd ask you to pause the video now, and we'll regroup in a few minutes. So how does high quality pedagogy support a positive writing culture and environment in our classrooms? And we have touched on this a little bit through the presentation so far, but we know that the stronger we are in our pedagogy and our practice, the more confident and motivated our learners will feel around their writing, and that will lead to achievement and success in their writing. So if we're considering this writing cycle, where we allow children and learners to get ready to write, we then allow time for writing, and then we build in time for feedback and time to celebrate success, is a really good way to think about writing and how we teach that across the week. And if we're thinking about that getting ready to write as a really key and essential component that will help build motivation and confidence for our learners in the writing process. We're going to think now around that getting ready to write time, and thinking around three key areas. First of all, how we provide a motivating stimulus. Secondly, how we allow opportunities for our learners to engage in dialogue and oral rehearsal and practice before they write. And third, thinking around how we model writing, so our learners are already feeling confident before they've even started putting pen to paper. So there's lots of different and exciting ways that we can help build a stimulus for writing. And we've listed a few on the screen here. This will really motivate our learners and allow them to become excited around the context and the topic that they're writing about. So ideas range from using props and objects to using digital tools or videos. It might be linked into a real life experience. All of these contexts need to be built up and talked about before the writing process begins. Again, here we've shared some practical ideas that you might use to help build that stimulus, some digital tools, some links to websites that might be useful. Another one is Literacy Shed, which is a really useful one for short video clips, but can really engage dialogue and build up context for writing. Once we build up that motivation for writing through that exciting stimulus, we can consider opportunities to allow our learners to engage in dialogue. Using talking partners, talking trios can be a really positive tool here, where we're allowing our learners to talk about the knowledge they might need, talking about the content. We can support them to build up the vocabulary that they're going to use. Also looking at opportunities to orally rehearse what they're going to say. So in the example on the screen there, where we've got the sentence stems, firstly, secondly, if we were writing instructions, perhaps to make something like an origami frog, we might ask the learners, tell your partner a sentence from your writing starting with firstly. Think about the first thing you have to do. They could then practice with each other, and this really supports those learners that are less confident, and the teacher as facilitator can really start to build in the vocabulary and the richness of language that you're looking for. In this slide, we can really think about those three different ways that we can model in writing. So firstly, we're thinking around teacher modelling, and that's that thinking aloud approach, where the teacher is modelling the thought process that the writer has to go through as they write. Secondly, thinking around shared modelling, where the class and the teacher collectively are contributing ideas together and creating a short piece of writing together. This may be only 1 or 2 sentences at the start of the lesson to build that confidence, and so that the learners are really aware of the expectations. The third way that you can model within your classrooms, and I think this is one that's quite widely used across the authority, is looking at positive examples, so using waggles, or often using examples that maybe aren't as strong. So again, using a short phrase or sentence, using a short paragraph. What has this writer done really well? How can we use the ideas in our own writing? Or what has this learner actually not done that we can really improve on? And these can be really powerful as part of that before getting ready to write phase. So again, we're going to take some time to have a short pause and look at some reflective questions. Your facilitator will guide you through this. So thinking around the good practice that's already going on in your school, we'd like you to discuss how you are currently building up stimulus, engaging with dialogue and modelling writing within your writing lessons. And then considering if there's anything that you would like to maybe build on or develop in your classrooms, and thinking about those consistent approaches across the whole school. And that's how we're really going to make a difference to writing when we have consistent systems in place across the whole school. So if you'd like to pause the video now and take time for that dialogue, and we will join you again shortly. part of the writing culture and environment, we can look at the end of the process, thinking around how we're allowing opportunities to celebrate success. And this is a really important part to help build that motivation and enthusiasm for writing. So thinking around the different ways that we celebrate the writing. Are there opportunities in your school to celebrate and share writing through assemblies, through sharing with other classes, through writing walls? So lots of different ways to really make that and bring that to the forefront of our thinking and practice.
In terms of developing a writing culture and environment in your early level setting, there are a few digital tools you can use to support you with this. So firstly, to support gross and fine motor development, you can begin by using your smartboard. This supports children's gross motor movements and the development of these, and also enables the children to cross the midline. You can use the slow-mo feature on your camera app. If you go to the scroll wheel on your camera app and take it from picture to slow-mo, you can actually video the children maybe making large body movements such as jumping, running, spinning, and slow that down for them so they can see what their body's doing in that moment. You can invest in a stylus, just a very cheap one, to support mark making with their stylus, or they could just use their finger on the iPad. You can use the zoom function on your camera app or actually in the magnifier app, and that will support the children's fine motor skills and pinching their fingers together and away. In terms of mark making and transcription, you could use Sketches School. That's a really good one. So children are able to mark make on Sketches School. You can import photos into that as well, or like photographs of mark making or their name or different shapes, and then they can trace over that, and you can then remove the original picture so they can see what they've done as well underneath. That's quite a useful tool, and you can also use markup on photos. So if you go into any photo you've taken, press the pencil and you can mark that up, and the children can make themselves into give themselves different hairstyles, make themselves into superheroes, etc., etc. Children can also document their own writing from their own imagination by speaking. So obviously, so they can do that into their iPad, and they can use the dictation tool on the keyboard, which is a little microphone button at the bottom. Or they can record a voice note, whether that be on Shobi or on one of the Apple apps, Keynote or Pages, and that just gives them an opportunity to record their voice and record themselves writing a story using their imagination. They could also put together a story and create it as a kind of comic book feel on Clips. So the Clips app has a comic book feature, so you can use photos that the children have taken, or you can take them in the app and apply the comic book filter, and then they can record themselves telling the story over the top. We would always recommend that in early level you use the guided access feature on the iPads, which ensures that the iPad stays in one app and children are unable to navigate away from the app you choose for them. So this allows freedom with guidance and enables children to be just a lot more independent with using the iPad. If you'd like any support with any of these tools I've talked about, please do get in touch with your early years teacher and I'd be happy to help. So further up the school into first and second level, although you might find some of these features I'm going to talk about helpful for early level too, we can look at some of the ways we can use digital technology to reduce barriers to learning in writing. On the iPad, the inbuilt tools that do this are called the accessibility features. Firstly, of course, just before I go into the accessibility features, if you just simply enable children to type using the on-screen keyboard, it will allow children to document information without the need to write, which is so important for some children. When, as we know, the process of writing is so much more important than putting pen to paper, this means that children who find handwriting difficult and for whom it's a barrier to learning, these tools can have a huge impact on how they're able to document learning and in how they engage with the wider curriculum as a whole. So you could consider allowing all children to choose what medium to use when engaging in a writing exercise. And you might want to try some of the tools that I'm going to talk about in your classroom to see what they would pick. Just another note on typing, just before we move on to the features. If you decide to invest, some people invest in Bluetooth keyboards for iPads. If you do that, it will actually, as an extra, support the children to improve their typing skills at the same time. You'll find with the on-screen keyboard, the predictive words displayed at the top provide an additional layer of support for those children that need it. For children with English as an additional language, you can change the keyboard language in settings, and then those predictive words that the keyboard changes and the predictive words that come up will actually be in that language as well. So this image outlines some of the features. It's an interactive image on the Inspire Learning website. On the website, you can tap the small orange circles to watch demo videos on what I'm about to outline. I will pop a QR code of this interactive visual to scan at the end of this slide. So it includes videos on how to support writers by changing certain settings on your iPad. So if we're looking at the speech features, if a child wants to use speech to document their writing, the dictation feature is really useful. It's a little microphone button on the on-screen keyboard just to the left of the spacebar, and it puts the child's words into text, providing the child speaks clearly and carefully, so they have to remember to do that. In terms of apps, on the Pages app, which is the Apple version of Microsoft Word, you can insert audio, and you can record audio that can be saved within the document alongside text, images, and then played back and listened to instead of read. So if children want to hear, if you want to provide feedback as a teacher, you can record feedback on a child's work, and then the child can listen back instead of having to read their feedback. Equally, if children want to record their own voices, ideas and opinions instead of having to do handwriting and put pen to paper, it's available on all the Apple apps, not just Pages, Keynote as well, but also on the equivalent Microsoft apps, which are Word and PowerPoint. And as promised, here's the QR code for you to pause this video and scan, and that will get you to that interactive image on the Inspire Learning website, and you can get watching some of those videos. So here we've got an example of a few of the apps available that reduce barriers to learning, not just the inbuilt tools that we've just discussed. Again, this can be found as an interactive image on the Inspire Learning website, and it links to demos of the features shown here and what I'm about to talk through. I will pop another QR code up for you at the end of this slide so you can access that yourselves. So firstly, a good app for accessibility when writing is the Google Translate app for those children who've got English as an additional language. You can find the transcribe function, which is really useful for children and families with, like I was saying, English as an additional language. Just all you have to do is speak into the app and it will translate what you're saying into text instantly. There's also, if you want to go a step further, a conversation function, which essentially is a bit like transcribing, but it does it both ways instantly. So it will transcribe into text what is spoken, and then it will read it out loud, and then you can do it in the opposite direction as well. So that's really useful. Not so many on this slide, so I'll just do this QR code for you. You can scan this to get to that interactive visual on the Inspire Learning website, and you can find a wealth of, also as well as the website, you can find a wealth of short demo videos on the Inspire Learning YouTube channel that can help you embed digital technology into your practice.
So to develop that culture and an environment for writing in a wider sense, it's important that we explore parental engagement and family learning in our schools. This is a great visual here from Education Scotland that guides us through the different aspects of how we can really work and engage with our families and partners. So thinking about current practice in your school around engaging with families and partners, we'd like you once again to stop the video and have a professional dialogue with colleagues in your school. Thinking about how do you engage families across the school in the writing process, any steps that you could take as a school to improve that engagement, and are there any opportunities within your school to work with community learning and development to try and support family literacy? If you pause the video now, and we'll join you again shortly. As a follow-up activity in your schools, you might wish to engage with some further research around this area of parental engagement and family learning. A couple of documents that we recommend here. First, on the left-hand side is a link to a site on Education Scotland called A Toolkit for Parental Engagement. Really useful information on that particular link. And then on the right-hand side, we have a link to Scottish Borders Council Community Learning and Development website. These are both useful links if you want to dive a little bit deeper in terms of that parental engagement and exploring how we can build in support from our families, but also support our families with their literacy skills. So we're just going to take a few minutes to reflect back on the session aims, and hopefully through some of the input that you've heard today and through some of your conversations with colleagues, you feel that we've met these aims. So we wanted to really look and develop an understanding of how we build that positive writing culture and environment. And we also wanted to share some pedagogy and practical strategies that you can use within your classrooms. So just to recap on some of our content from today's session, we looked first of all at the writing triangle and the pillars. We've also looked and discussed the 4 capacities and the 4 contexts for learning, and how it's important that we embed writing into these 4 areas. We've talked about that importance of writing every day and across different curricular areas, and how we build that purpose and motivation to write. We've looked at the messages from Realising the Ambition around interactions, spaces and experiences, and looked at how we could develop that across the whole school. We've also explored, with the help of Kirsty, some digital tools that will really support us in our writing. And then finally, we explored how we could engage further with our parents and families to enhance literacy. So what's next? Our next session is going to be looking at writing through word level instruction, and particularly with a focus on systematic synthetic phonics. But for now, we'd really like you to think within your schools around that quality improvement journey. So thinking around what you've heard today around building the writing culture and environment, where are you now? What are the next steps that you might like to take as a school? And what impact would you expect to have with your learners? So we'd like to ask for you to take a few minutes to give us some feedback today. The Interaction video series is a new approach that we're introducing in an attempt to support all schools and practitioners across Scottish Borders Council to engage with the same message and activities, but at an individually convenient time for you. So by providing the video content with in-person facilitators in each school, whilst not the same as full live sessions, we can hopefully achieve widespread learning. Your feedback on how to maximise this approach is really valuable. So we'd ask if you could scan the QR code and take a few minutes to do that now. So lastly, just to say thank you for your concentration, your dialogue, your input today within the session. We do appreciate it and realise it's a long day after a day in the classroom, but hopefully you found today's session valuable and this can support you in your schools with moving forward with the SBC Way writing curriculum. Have a good evening, everyone, and thanks for your time.